I'm sick of this country. I'll get out of here. I've had the money to get out. I hate this.
You're sick of this country. They're coming from Afghanistan and Syria. Simon, you're a hypocrite. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it as it is.
All right, so I saw an article in The Guardian the other day which said that 2/3 of voters believe that migration is rising, even though it's coming down. And I actually wondered why people believe this. And then I heard this call, which reminded me that these people walk amongst us and they are receiving a hell of a lot of propaganda through their social media feed and their legacy media feeds almost all the time. Now, outside of James O'Brien, I do think Ben Kentish is definitely one of the best at dealing with callers like this, and you really get a chance to see it in this call. So let's watch this together, and then I'll give you my thoughts at the end.
I don't agree with you at all, unfortunately.
Okay.
In my eyes, you're a liberal socialist, and I don't agree with your politics, man.
I don't think I am, Simon, but go on. Why do you think I'm wrong on this?
Right, these people who come in from France, right, they've all got smartphones. They're in a safe country. France, there's nothing wrong living in France. I would live there if I had the opportunity, right? They come here because they go on the smartphones and they see how good and how easy it is for this country to give them, like, free stuff and everything. And everybody in this country, right, I speak for everybody, right, let's be honest. I speak for us all. Some people are afraid to come on your show and to tell you the truth how it is. Well, most people are scared to say what I want to say, and I'll tell you exactly how it is, right? They come here, they're all economic refugees, scroungers. That's what they are.
What's an economic refugee, Simon? Are they refugees or are they economic migrants?
No, they're not refugees, they're scroungers.
Right, that was the word you just used.
They've got money to give to gangs, right? You know gangs now. If you look back in history, well, I say history, look back, right? Gangs used to sell drugs in this country, heroin, all that rubbish, cocaine. The new commodity is human trafficking. Yeah. They're making millions and they're getting away with it. Those traffickers, right, they must be multi-millionaires.
I'm sure some of them are, yeah.
They're making millions, right, do you know what I mean?
They're evil. Evil people, what they do, trafficking in human lives.
They're disgraceful, right? Because everybody who comes across the channel has to pay money to get across here. They don't get here and out.
They're awful, Simon, aren't they? They traffic in human lives. So why do you have so little sympathy for their victims?
If I was the only place I can think of, right, who I...
Simon, hold on, just answer that for me, if you would.
Myanmar.
Simon, answer that for you, because you've just accepted that the people who are coming here on small boats have been trafficked. They are the victims of human traffickers, and yet you say they're all scroungers.
Yeah, because they've been, Simon, they've been, sorry, Ben, sorry, beg your pardon. Ben, they've been sold a story, right, to come here. That's their job, to get them into Britain so they tell them how wonderful this country is. A genuine refugee, in my book, would be somebody from Myanmar who hasn't got a single penny, right?
But if they hadn't got a single penny, they wouldn't be able to come here, would they?
Well,
having a bit of money, having your family's life savings that you hand over to reach our shores doesn't mean you're not a refugee. Doesn't mean you're not fleeing torture or persecution or war or famine, does it?
No, I haven't got £8,000 in my bank to pay to anybody.
But
right?
You just said if you did, you'd move to France, Simon.
Well, I'd go to France anyway.
Right, so you'd happily be an economic migrant yourself. You just don't want anyone to do it coming here.
Well, no, I didn't say that.
You said they live in France. I'd move to France if I could, you said.
Well,
you would happily be a migrant. You would happily go and start a new life in another country, France, but you don't. But you seem to have a very, very hostile view to some of the people who want to do the same here.
Yeah, they come here because they told a story. They believe the rubbish has been told to them. I mean,
but doesn't that make you a bit hypocritical, Simon? If you just told me you would quite like to go and live in France, but you're very angry about people coming to
live there. Yes,
right.
I would go. I'm sick of this country.
So you're just jealous. You're just jealous of the people who have the money to come and live here because you said if you had the money, you'd do exactly what they're doing.
No, I would live in France if I had the money.
Right. And they want to live in here. They do have the money and they're trying to come here. So they're no different to what you would do if you had the money.
Yeah, but
so what's the difference between you and them?
Got nothing.
What's the difference, Simon?
Somebody's got nothing, right?
What's the difference,
Myanmar, right?
Simon, what's the difference between you and them?
right? The difference between me and somebody from Myanmar...
No, I'm not talking about Myanmar.
Under the Chinese
I'm not talking about Myanmar.
right?
I'm talking the people who pay money to come and live in this country to start a new life. You've just told me that if you had money, you would do exactly the same thing and go and live in France. So what's the difference between you and them?
I'm sick of this country. I'll get out of here. I've had the money to get out. I hate this.
You're sick of this country. They're coming from Afghanistan and Syria. You're saying you don't like this country, this liberal, prosperous Western democracy. You want to go and live in France. And you're hating on people who did exactly the same thing, but coming from far worse places than Redcar.
I would live anywhere else.
You're just like them, Simon, aren't you? You're just like them.
You know what I mean?
You hate people, but you are basically just like them because you want to do what they are doing.
No.
So why do you hate them so much?
Ben, I said that they're coming here, they're not genuine refugees. That's what they're not, right?
But even they are.
Now,
but even if they're not, Simon, even if they're not, and they are, 2/3 of them are found to have valid asylum claims.
They're not.
But all right, but Simon,
how do you know they're genuine refugees?
Because the Home Office finds that they meet the criteria for genuine refugees. I don't think they are. The Home Office tells us they are. Anyway, even if they are all economic migrants, they are all just coming here. They're not have valid asylum claims. They just they don't like where they come from. They want to start a new life. That's what you want to do when you go to France.
They want to come here because they believe the stories of the people smugglers. Tell them how good it is here.
Yeah, but
that's why they come here.
But you want to move to France and start a new life there.
Listen, I would actually move to Ireland if I had the chance.
Right. So you're not fussed about the country that you become an economic migrant in. You just don't want anyone to do it here.
No, I'm not an economic refugee. I'm not.
But poor. If you had the money, you just said you would be.
I haven't got £8,000 to give to...
Right, but if you do, you'd be out of here to France or Ireland.
Yeah, I'd go to Ireland because that's where we...
But you don't like people using the money they do have to come and start a new life here.
I'm just
saying... Do you not see, Simon, that you are criticising people for doing exactly the same thing that you've several times now told me that if you had the only thing stopping you doing what they do is the means to do it?
Yeah, but the problem is they're coming here, right, pretending to be refugees and they're all economic...
Right, so if they just said, right? I am an economic migrant, let me in, we should.
They're all economic scroungers. That's what they are because they've been told a story and they believe it.
So what would you be if you moved to France, Simon?
Well,
would you be an economic scrounger?
Well, no, because I've got £8,000 to give to
but if you did,
smuggler.
All right, I hear you. But if you did and you moved to France or Ireland, would you be an economic scrounger too?
Well, no, because I've got skills to offer that country, and like I said, the relatives come from there.
And you think none of the 50,000 people who came here on small boats last year have any skills?
No, the vast majority of people who come here, right, come here on a lie. They pretend. They don't have
any skills.
Repression, they pretend to slip. They come from. Most of the people who come here, right, are basically here to basically. There's nothing wrong with them.
They're here to start a new life, like you want to in France and Ireland. But you can't see the similarities, you just can't see it. You can't see that you are saying that you want to do exactly what they are doing.
Yeah, if you lived in Afghanistan and you got to Sweden, say, or Germany, would you be grateful to be there? You would be, wouldn't you?
Why would you be more grateful to be there than here?
Because they are Western countries with freedom and democracy.
So is Britain, right? But you want to leave it?
No, the people who come from Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
If they were... They should have stood up and fight the Taliban, but they were scared.
So they don't like the way their country's going, so they should start and fight. But you don't like the way this country's going, Simon, so you're off to France. Simon, you're a hypocrite. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it as it is. You are accusing people of all the things that you've just told me you want to do. They should stay in a safe Western country, but you wouldn't. They're economic migrants, but you've just told me that you want to go and start a new life in France. And now you're telling me they should stay and make their own country better instead, even though that's not what you yourself would do if you had the money to move.
Then they come here because they sold a story by the guys.
Right.
Do you not
Simon,
understand
we're going around in circle. I'm trying to just make you see that they're not that different to you. And actually, 2/3 of them are. They are asylum seekers. They're not moving because they don't like the country. They're moving because they've been persecuted and tortured and their families have been murdered and so on. That's why 2/3 of them are found to be genuine refugees. The rest, if they are economic migrants, well, we can have a debate about how many we take, but they're not that different to you, Simon, if you want to go and start a new life somewhere else instead. They're people, just like you and me, and that's what I think we've lost sight of in this conversation.
All right, so let's break down what we just witnessed. Simon's entire argument rests on the idea that people who want a better life in the UK are scroungers. He's furious that they would leave a safe country like France to come here. But then, a few simple, calm questions from Ben hold the thread that unravels everything with this guy's thinking. Simon doesn't just say he'd move. He says, I hate this country. The man, furious at people for coming to the UK, actively hates living here himself and wants out. What do we call it when you condemn in others the exact thing you want for yourself? He calls them economic migrants as an insult, but admits he would become one in a heartbeat if he had the money. And that's classic British exceptionalism. And when Ben completely corners him, Simon's only defense is, I've got skills to offer. He just arrogantly assumes that out of tens of thousands of people, none of them do. And we know that not to be true. There are documented cases of people being extremely well qualified that have come here for a better life. Look at our NHS, for instance. And it's a desperate excuse that reveals the core of the hypocrisy. It's only okay when he does it. It's only okay when Brits do it. But this isn't just about one caller. It's a perfect takedown of a hollow argument we hear all of the time. Ben didn't need to shout, he just held up a mirror, and the caller couldn't stand what he saw. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons for more. Doing that really helps the channel. Also, please don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.